All right, I think we're live and ready and alive and ready. All right, so now we're going to begin the last chapter in the fourth book of the Bhagavat. Maitreya Uvacha. Do you know what that means? Maitreya Uvacha means Maitreya said. Tat utpanna vijnana ashvadhokshaja bhashitam. Smaranta atmaje bharyam visrijya pravrajan grihat. Any idea what that means? Heital, do you have any? Maybe you know some of these words. People that may know a little bit of the words, they might know a bit of what the meaning is going to be just by hearing it. Tata utpanna vijnana ashvadokshaja bhashitam. Somebody said something. Adokshaja said something. Smaranta, they remembered it. Atmaje bharyam, something about a wife and a child. Visrija pravarjan grihat, something about from the house going out, right? So now you might actually be able to understand the meaning, but I will just translate it for you. The Pracetas developed deep realization. This is Maitreya saying this. The Pracetas developed deep realization by living with Marisha, while remembering what the most attractive had told them. When they had finally given their wife a son, they departed from their home. So there's a couple interesting things. So Maitreya says they got Vigyan, which means deep realization. You have Jnana and then you have Vijnana. Jnana means accurate perception. And then Vijnana means it's more than even an accurate perception. It's like very, very, very tangible. Very, very real. When it's Vijnana. Utpanna vijnana means it arose. This very tangible perception arose. So this is a very important point. This is actually why the ashram order has grihastha ashram following brahmacharya ashram. In the brahmacharya ashram, you get your basic instructions about life. And then the grihastha ashram comes next, so that you put those instructions into practice and you get vijnana. In the brahmacharya ashram, you get jnana. In the grihastha ashram, you get vijnana. Because without the brahmacharya ashram, the grihastha ashram will not really produce vijnana. It will probably just reinforce ajnana, misperception. Grihastha ashram means, brahmacharya ashram means this is student phase. And then grihastha is like the common family phase. So education always comes before starting a family, doesn't it? Even in modern culture. So this is why. If you have knowledge as an idea from the brahmachari stage, from the student stage, then when you go to live a regular life, you can put that knowledge into practice and it can become vijnana, something very real. So Maitreya says that these pracetas, they got vijnana by living their life with their wife, Marisha, right? Atmaje bharyam, by being with their wife. But because they had adokshaja bhashitam, because they were instructed by adokshaja, then they had something to make sense out of their regular life. You get it? So that adokshaja bhashitam is like their brahmacharya, where they're getting their instructions, and then they're putting it into practice, and it becomes real. So there's a few interesting things. Maitreya describes Bhagavan as adokshaja. You heard this word before on the live streams, but I'll explain it again. Hi, Waylon. I live in Japan. Vida. I'll explain this word Akshaja one more time. Aksha. Akshaja. Aksha. Aksha means senses, particularly your eyes. Right? Akshaja. Something that comes from Janma. Jat. That is born from, created from the eyes. Akshaja is something created from your eyes. So, for example, if you look at a Picasso painting, that experiences Atmaja. And since, not Atmaja, Akshaja. And since the Aksha is the primary sense for humans, it just stands for everything. So even if you hear of Mozart or if you hear a Cardi B, that's also Akshaja from your ears. It's a experience which is produced by the ears or the eyes or the mouth or the nose or the skin. That's called Akshaja. So in other words, any kind of sense perception is Akshaja. Adhakshaja. Adha means to put something down. So I have a hill in the park. It's kind of a big hill, especially if you're a kid. It's a big hill. But when you go like half a mile north, there's a mountain. Now, the hill looks big to you when it's the only thing in the park that's not flat. But when you see the mountain, then the hill all of a sudden doesn't look big anymore. That's what adha means. When something else is much more prominent than the other thing and it therefore belittles it. So adha akshaja is the name for the person whose experience makes the other experiences seem like nothing. So Akshaja is sense experiences, hearing a nice song, seeing a nice picture, etc. That seems like a nice mountain in our world. But the beauty of Bhagavan is Adakshaja, like the mountain compared to the hill in the park. So the reason why Maitreya describes him as such is because the Pracetas, they got blessings from Vishnu for 1,000 years, right? Thousands of years of unrelenting, undiminishing sensual enjoyment with Marisha, who is high class material. She's the daughter of Pralocha, the courtesan of heaven. So they must be getting very, very bewildered by the sensual life that they're living. No, because they have adokshaja. They have an experience of adokshaja. So they're not getting very carried away. And they're remembering the instructions of adokshaja. So Maitreya describes Bhagavan as adokshaja, which literally means the belittler of sensual pleasures. Because the beauty of adokshaja is so inherently superior to the pleasure conventionally available through sense perception, by remembering their interaction with him, the Pracetas did not develop any confusions or attachments to conventional things while living conventional lives. Instead, they got vigyan. They deepened their realization. Now, this other interesting thing is it says smaranta at the end of that, at the end of their time with their wife, Atma Bharyam, they gave their wife a son, Atmaja. So Akshaja is something that's produced from your eyes. Atmaja is something produced from yourself. So it's a child. Atmaja Bharya. Bharya means the one who you take care of, the one who you support. So the wife is called the Bharya, the one that the husband supports. Atmaja Bharya. They gave the wife a son. So this is interesting because previously we heard about the son. At the end of the previous chapter, you heard that the son was the reincarnation of Diksha, and then you got all this information about the son. So it sounds like the Pracetas came out of the water, saw a bunch of trees, burned them down, married the tree daughter, and then all of a sudden had a baby right there on the spot. But now what Maitreya is saying is, I just told you about the baby, but it doesn't mean that they actually had a baby right there on the shore of the lake. They went and they lived their life for thousands of years. They had a great time. They developed their spiritual thought even deeper. And then after all that, they gave the child. They produced the child. And then upon producing the child, they considered their responsibilities finished. So although the child had already been named and described, he was not immediately born. The Pracetas and Marisha married, enjoyed life together for thousands of years, as foretold previously by Bhagavat, and then gave birth to their child. After a son could take care of Marisha, the husbands could responsibly leave to prepare for the ends of their lives. They would not leave the Bharya without somebody to support her. So after the son is born and grows up and is capable, then they feel that they can leave. They wouldn't leave the wife alone. They want to leave, however, because they don't. There's further stages after Griha. There's Brahmacharya in the beginning, there's Grihastha ashram, there's Grihastha in the middle, and then there's Vanaprastha at the end. So for all of the parties involved, when they age, they separate. It's actually sannyasa what they did, because they separated. When it's Vanaprastha, the wife and husband remain together, but they leave their situation. So, they wanted to move on to that stage, but they didn't want to do it before they had successfully and fully fulfilled all their responsibilities within the previous ashram. Just like you don't want to take a second step before the first step is firm. Otherwise you trip. All right. Any questions on that first verse? Maitreya uvacha tatta utpana vijnana ashvadoksha jabashitam smaranta atmaji bharyam visraja pravrajan grihat. The Pracetas developed deep realization by living with Marisha while remembering what the most attractive had told them. Most attractive is the Dokshaja. When they had finally given their wife a son, they departed from their home. Any question? No questions? We're still alive. We're still alive and alive? Yes. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Ghana and Vidya. Oh, Jnana and Vidya are synonyms. They're similar words. Jnana means perception. So it comes to mean knowledge because you know what you perceive. Vidya is a similar word, but it's more about education or having information, good information. Vidya is really the information that you have that enables jnana. So avidya actually means lack of information. The lack of information prevents the perception from being accurate. Perception itself is just a bunch of raw data. It's actually the information machine which makes sense of the perception. The brain is what makes sense of the data that comes in over the optical nerve and the oral nerve, etc. So the vidya is the stuff that's in the brain, and then the jnana is the stuff that's the raw information. Any other questions? Okay, we will do the next one. Diksha. And many people are named Diksha. And actually, many people want to get Diksha because then they feel that they are very, very, I don't know, proper or something, or authorized. When you get Diksha is, well, what does it mean? We'll find out. Dikshita, I think Dikshita Brahmana Satrena Sarva Bhutatma Medasa. Praticham Dishi Velayam Siddho Bud Yatra Jajali. My daughter thinks this is the coolest thing in the world, that there's a guy named Jajali. And this is going to be her newest probably her newest favorite name to say, Jajali. So here, what does this mean? Anybody who knows Sanskrit maybe figures out some of the things. Dikshita, if you know that. Brahma satrena sarva bhutatma medasa praticham dishi. Maybe you know that one. It has to do with going west. Velayam siddho. They got some kind of instruction or perfection. Yatra jajali, from some guy named Jajali. So here's the translation. When they finally gave their wife a son, they departed from their home. Now, they went westward when they departed. So they, like Gujarat, they went towards Gujarat. They went westward to the seashore. I don't know if there's no information of how north or south they are. They went westward to the seashore where Jajali taught them the meaning of the Vedas. And they were able to see all things the same way they saw themselves. So here's the breakdown of the things. They went westward. That's Praticham Dishi. Why'd they go westward? They tend to like westward. There must be some reason why. I think they went westward for doing their austerities as well. The brahmachari, in the beginning of the story. And they like to see, and that has to do with their mother, doesn't it? They went westward to the seashore, and at the seashore they met Jajali. Who is Jajali? It doesn't say in this text. The Bhagavatam doesn't explain who Jajali is. You're supposed to just know. But thankfully it's not that hard to find out because his story is told in the Mahabharata. So I'll tell you who he is in a second. But let's go over the rest of the stuff first. They went westward, and at the seashore they met this person named Jajali. And Jajali was Siddha. He had perfected something. So he was able to teach them something, Siddha Abhut. What did he teach them? He Dikshita. Dikshita means to teach somebody something. In India, there's a last name, Dikshita. It means you're a teacher. It means you're a brahmana. It means that you instruct people, you give people information. And specifically, Diksha, and to have Diksha means to be they say initiated. It really doesn't really mean anything about initiated, but it means to be commenced, like a commencement ceremony in a university. You'd be commenced or you'd be accepted by a teacher or a school. That's called a Diksha. So the Pracetas, they got educated, Dikshita, from Jajali. In what subject? Brahmasatrena. In the subject of the Vedas. What did they learn when they get educated in the subject of the Vedas? Sarva Bhutatma Medasa. Sarva Bhuta means all things, especially all beings. Atma Medasa. All beings should be seen or thought of as yourself. That's what they learned from Jajali. They didn't just learn the one saying and then say thank you and then go home. They learned it, Vijnana. They experienced it, they realized it. He taught them how to realize it. They went westward to the seashores where Jajali taught them the meaning of the Vedas, and they were able to see all things the way they saw themselves. There's a little bit more that I'll read you first before I explain who Jajali is. Jajali's story is pretty interesting. So there's a little bit more about how he educated them, which is relevant. So I'll read that first. So this is the third text. Tan nirjita prana mano vacho dusho jitasanan shanta samana vigran pare male brahmani yojitatmana surasure dyo dadrishe Nārada. So you hear any of these words? Nirjita, you know, if you're Indian at all, you know the word jit. Because so many guys have names jit, something jit. Jit means to conquer. Tan nirjita prana. They conquered, they controlled the prana. Mano, the feelings. Vacho, the speech. Drisho, the perception, the seeing. Jitasana, they mastered an asana. Shanta Samana Vigran. What is it? Yeah, that Shanta Samana Vigran describes the asana. It's the name of the asana. It is complete straightness. So the whole body is just held straight. You're standing up. That's the asana that they mastered. Premale Brahmani Yojita Mana. So without para, nothing else. Amala, no interference. Brahmani Yojita Mana. They concentrate themselves on Brahman. And then Surasure Dyo Dadrishesma Nārada. Then Nārada, they saw Nārada, or Nārada saw them. And Nārada is described as Sura Asura Idya, somebody who's respected by both the Suras and the Asuras, the gods and the demons. So for the translation, they mastered the asana of standing straight up. That's what Jajali taught them. They mastered the asana of standing straight up, which gave them complete control of their breath, feelings, words, and perceptions, and allowed them to concentrate themselves on Brahman without distraction or confusion. If you don't have control of your breath, feelings, words, and perceptions, then you won't be able to concentrate on Brahman or anything without distraction or confusion. This is why the asanas are important, to get the body in order, in control, and the breath, and then the mind follows. Nārada, who is adored by the gods and demons alike, saw them doing this. Okay, now I'll tell you the Jajali story. Who Jajali is. I'll just check to see if you guys put it. Kermit. Wow, that's so cool, Spacebug. Okay, Kat Devi, she says, I prefer Shiksha. So this just brings up the thing. Actually, there's a big misconception. It's in the ISKCON world that Shiksha is something and Diksha is something else. That Shiksha is the instruction and Diksha is the ceremony of initiation. This is just a complete ISKCONism. It's not an actual truth. Diksha is the inauguration or the commencement of the education. And Shiksha is the actual education. So you actually don't get Shiksha without Diksha. Nor is Diksha some kind of a formality or anything. The Diksha is simply finding the teacher, finding the student, the teacher and the student establishing their relationship. That's the Diksha. So for example, when the Pracetas got to the West, met Jajali, they got Diksha. And then when he taught them the asana, and then he taught them how to focus on Brahman, which the asana enabled, that's the Shiksha. There's no Shiksha without Diksha, and there's no Diksha without Shiksha. Bardo, is Jnana the result of Mananam and Vijnana the result of Nidhi-Siddhasya? No. I see. Is Jnana the result of Mananam and Vijnana the result of Nidhi-Siddhasya? Yes. Very good. Vijnana is the result of practice, is what she's saying. And Jnana is the result of contemplation. All right, so I'll tell you now the story of Jajali. Jajali. Once upon a time, there was a old man who wanted to understand the whole universe and wanted to understand God and all such things. So he decided that he would become a yogi, and he was going to be big time. He was going to do it for real. So he went to the forest and was doing the real deal. His hair became a big mess of dreadlocks. His body became dirty and skinny. He hardly ate. He hardly slept on the floor and the rocks. He would purposely expose himself to inclement weather and try to remain calm and undisturbed in it. And he practiced a particular asana of standing straight. and still. He was so good at this asana that the animals in the forest start to mistake him for a tree. His skin was very brown and dirty, so it looked like bark. His hair looked like leaves and branches because of all the matted dreadlocks. And he just stood as still as a branch, as a tree. So the animals started to think he was a tree. And he was standing for longer and longer periods of time. So once it so happened that a pair of birds thought they found a tree with a nest. But it was actually Jajali standing with this big cone of dreadlocks, a big nest of dreadlocks on his head. But they thought, wow, this is a nice nest. Let's make this our home. When Jajali realized there were birds in his head, he didn't want to move because some family had made a home in his hair. So he decided, you know what? I will stand here for as long as it takes for them to make their babies. So the weeks pass, the months pass, she lays eggs, the eggs hatch. Once the eggs hatch, Jajali finally moves. And the birds fly off. And Jajali feels so proud that he did this, that he exclaims into the forest, wow, I'm really good. I really am kind to animals, and I really am good, tolerant. I'm really good. I really did. And a voice, which probably was the birds, actually, and you'll find out later on. They said, actually, you're just kind of starting out. If you want to meet somebody who's really mastered this, This Sarva Bhutatma, Sarva Bhuta Atma Medasa. That's what Jajali was starting to get. The concept that the birds are just as important as he is. They made a home in his hair. Why should he wreck their house just because he needs to sit down or lie down? He wouldn't want somebody to wreck his house just because they want to lie down. So he's starting to understand Sarva Bhuta Atma Medasa, which is what he later teaches the Pracetas. He's going to the interesting part I think about this story is that he's going to teach the Pracetas exactly what he learned, even down to the bit of standing up straight. So anyway, the remainder part of the story is also very interesting. The birds say, you're okay, but the guy who's really good at it is this guy named Tuladar. And the Jajali says, where is he? I want to learn from him. And they say, sure, he's not in the forest, The guy said, yeah, it's okay. He's in the city. You're going to have to go back to his city. He's in the city? Why is he in the city? I thought you said he was a spiritualist. Yeah, he's in the city. Go find him. His name is Tuladar. Okay. So Jajali leaves the forest, goes down to the city to look for Tuladar. Starts asking around, somebody named Tuladar? Tuladar, yeah. He's the guy who runs the grocery store. Tuladar's the guy that runs a grocery store. This is what happens if you actually get Sarva Bhuta Medasa. All things are equal, all things are the same. What's the point of going to the forest? Just work in a grocery store. It's just as good. And so he went in to meet Tuladar. And that's what the astounding thing that he realized, that this is so deep. This Vigyan is so deep that this guy lives in the city, not in the forest, works in a grocery store, not as a yogi. And he has more realization than I do. Because that's the realization. All things are equal. So Tuladar somehow imparted the instructions that Jajali needed to know. And also did some other various things that were interesting, including call the birds. He is so in touch with all living beings that they respond to his calls as well. This is the beautiful part actually. This is actually described in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. The result of ahimsa is that you will not experience violence. The result of practicing ahimsa or nonviolence is that you will never be the subject of aggression. it would be impossible to you carry like a bubble of nonviolence around you. So similarly with Tuladara, when you truly consider other people to be yourself, they can't help but consider you to be very, very instrumental and part of themselves. And so in the case of Tuladar, who had really perfected this, if he had a wish, the animals and birds and people would respond to it. So he was able to call the two birds that nested on Jajali's head to come and speak in human language to Jajali. Maybe it was even the birds that gave him the instructions. So this is a wild story. Awesome story. Jajali, great name. This is the person whom the Pracetas decided they wanted to get their final lessons from. Because that is also the whole Pracetas bhava, it's the whole mood of the Pracetas. Vishnu himself came to the Pracetas and said, you know why I'm here? Because I like how you guys have Atma Sambhava, like you are working as one unit. You're many different brothers, but you're acting as one. They had this was already their initial nature, was that they were tuned into this, how there's unity of identity and unity of being that's just manifested in many different facets. So they wanted to perfect that, so they went to find Jajali, who had perfected it because of getting it from Tuladar. So that's the story. And he indeed taught them how to stand up. It's very cool, isn't it? All right, so I will read you back what we've read so far to get back on track after the Mahabharata backstory. Oh, and now Nārada comes on the scene. So Nārada is interesting. The Pracetas developed deep realization by living with Marisha while remembering what the most attractive had told them. When they had finally given their wife a son, they departed from their home. They went westward to the seashore where Jajali taught them the meaning of the Vedas, and they were able to see all things the same way they saw themselves. They mastered the asana of standing straight up, which gave them complete control of their breath, feelings, words, and perceptions, and allowed them to concentrate themselves on Brahman without distraction or confusion. Nārada, who was adored by gods and demons alike, saw them doing this. Now we'll move on to the next bit. Tamagatam ta uttaya pranipatya pujayitva yatadesham sukhasinam atabhavan. This is a very simple verse. Tam agatam, when Nārada came, ta uttaya, they took notice. It literally means standing up, but it's hard to envision how they would stand up when they're practicing the asana of standing up. So take the meaning of uttaya as they took notice, they perked up. Pranipat abhinan, in fact what they did was they fell down. Pranipat means to fall down, to bow. But a small bow is just with the neck, a medium bow is with the waist, and a full bow is from the feet. So the full bow is called Dandavat Pranipat. That's what they did, because they're also very into being like sticks. So they went. When Nārada came, they abhinanda. Abhinanda means to welcome somebody. Nanda means pleasure. Abhinanda means to express your pleasure or greet. So they greeted Nārada very respectfully by bowing down. Pujayitva yatadesham. Puja means respectful or adoration, or respectful adoration. Pujitva yatadesham sukhasinam atabhavan. They gave him a nice, comfortable seat. They're sitting around doing austerities, practicing standing up. When Nārada comes, they don't expect him to just stand up straight like a tree. They want him to be comfortable. They want to bring him a lemonade, nimbu pani. Maybe you want a little fruit tea with that. They gave him a nice chair with some nice cushions, because they want him to be comfortable. They don't want him to leave soon. So they gave him a nice seat as he deserved. Pujitava yatadesham. Pracetas uchu. Now here's what they said to Nārada. Swagatam te surashedya dishtya Dishya no darshanam gata tava chankramanam brahman abhayaya yatarave. When he came before them, they all welcomed him, enthusiastically bowing fully on the ground. After they had given him a respectable and comfortable seat, they began to inquire. Welcome, sage of the gods. By good fortune today you come within our sight. Just like the sun, wherever you appear, confusion subsides. See this? Swagatam. Swagatam is even, you must know this word, right? Hey, tell anybody who has any exposure to Indian life knows the word Swagatam. It's the basic welcome word. Swagatam te. They said Swagatam to Nārada. That means welcome or happy that you're here. Swagatam means it's very fortunate that you came. We're lucky that you came. We're happy that you came. Swagatam te surarshe. Surarshe means the rishi of the suras. We'd be very fortunate if we get a rishi to come. We'd be very fortunate if we get a god to come. Wow. We would be very, very, very fortunate if we get a sage or a rishi of the gods. That's Nārada. So Swagatam te surarshe dya. Dishtya, it's our great fortune that darshanam gata, you came into our darshan, you came before our eyes. Tava chankramana, Sankranti, when the sun changes the zodiac sign, Sankranti, Sankramana. When the movements of the sun are called a sankrama, the very important movements. So they say your chankrama, your movements here and there, are like Ravis, are like the suns, because when you come, it's abhaya. So people are generally afraid of darkness, because darkness, you don't know what's in it. Could be something dangerous. And in fact, most dangerous things take shelter of darkness. But when the sun comes up, that fear that we naturally have of darkness goes away. So when Ravi comes up, fear goes away. And they said, you're like that. When you come into a place, we lose our bhaya, which means our fear. It also means our confusions. Yad adishtam bhagavata shiven adokshajena cha tadgriheshu prasaktanam prayasha kshapitam prabhu. This is pretty interesting. This is a little interesting nuance going on here. They say here, we got adishta. We got instructions from Bhagavan Shiva and Bhagavan Akshaja. Yad adishtam bhagavata shivaina adokshajena cha. We got already instructions from Shiva and Vishnu. These guys, they're pretty fortunate in life. They don't just get to meet Nārada. Before meeting Nārada, they met Vishnu. Before meeting Vishnu, they met Shiva. Yad adishtam bhagavata shivena dokshajena cha tad griheshu prasaktanam prayashakshapitam prabhu. But we spent a very long time in the house. Tad griheshu. We spent thousands of years in the house. Prasaktanam, really into it. We were really into what we were doing in that house. And that has kshapita, destroyed or faded the adishta, the instructions that we got from Shiva and Akshaja, Prayasha, pretty much. It's pretty much erased. Now, you know why that's interesting? And why this brings up a nuance, a very interesting nuance? Why is that interesting? Because this is a direct contradiction, isn't it? What does this directly contradict? This directly contradicts the opening statement that we looked at today, the opening statement of this chapter. Yeah, let me remind you the opening statement that we looked at today in the beginning of the chapter. Maitreya said the Pracetas got Vijnana by being in the Griha and remembering the instructions of Akshaja. The Pracetas developed deep realization by living with Marisha while remembering what the most attractive had told him. So according to Maitreya, when they went to live with Marisha, they became even more deep and realized in their knowledge. But now, according to them, they practically forgot everything. So what is the subtle nuances? That it's very important, actually, and you should understand what's really going on here. Really, to reveal to you the true story, Nārada Muni shows up. Let's say you put yourself in their shoes. Nārada Muni shows up. What do you want to get from Nārada Muni? Knowledge. This person's carrying immense knowledge. But you already met Vishnu, and Vishnu already taught you everything you need to know. And even more than that, before meeting Vishnu, you already met Shiva, who already taught you everything you need to know, because by what Shiva taught you, you were able to meet Vishnu, who taught you everything you need to know. What's Nārada Muni going to teach you? Furthermore, Nārada Muni is subordinate. He's junior in so many ways. He's junior to both Shiva and Vishnu. If you were, regardless of whatever, if like the culture is such that if there's a senior teacher available, the junior teacher doesn't really speak up. Especially if the senior teacher is really not just senior in age. You'll see in Bhagavatam, actually, the younger person speaks because they're senior in knowledge. This happens a lot. The whole story is being narrated by a 16-year-old. But if you have a person that's actually superior in knowledge, the person who's junior in knowledge doesn't start pontificating in the comments section on YouTube. They listen to the teacher. So, for all those reasons, Nārada Muni is not going to want to instruct him at anything. He's going to think, what am I going to tell you? Vishnu already told you. It would be insulting to Vishnu to come here and teach you. I just wanted to see what you're doing. I'm not thinking, I don't want to make Vishnu think that I thought that he left something out. So I have to teach you something else besides what he taught you. So you better give me a reason if you want me to tell you something. What do you need to know? Shiva, Vishnu, they already taught you everything. So what they say is, no, actually, we pretty much forgot everything they told us. Why? But actually, they really deeply realized what they learned from Shiva and Vishnu. So why are they lying to Nārada? They're not lying to Nārada. They really want to hear from Nārada. So they're feeling like, we feel like we need to know more. So we really haven't fully grasped. We need you to help us finish and understand it fully. Prior, we didn't fully grasp it. And you might think they're lying. Why are they lying? Just to get Nārada Muni to talk to them. Well, that's fine. You should be greedy for stuff that's real and true. But also, they're not lying. They really feel. The more that you actually realize, the more you realize you don't know and you need further instruction. So there's actually not a contradiction between Maitreya's opening statement and their statement that they just made. By living with Marisha, they deeply realized that they really haven't realized enough yet. And when Nārada Muni shows up, they take full advantage of that. So that's a very interesting little bit. Any questions about it? That is correct. All right, we will go on to the 7th. I think this is the last text that I have translated today. Maybe I'll just read you. I think I did a footnote. Their statement that they forgot what they learned from Shiva and Vishnu while living as Marisha's husband contradicts Maitreya's statement that they deeply realized this knowledge by doing so. They presented themselves in this way because they feared that Nārada would otherwise hesitate and perhaps refuse to instruct persons who had already been instructed by his superiors. So then the final statement for today. Actually, it's their final statement to Nārada. Next week we'll pick up with what Nārada tells them. Tanna pradyota yadhyatma jnanam tatvarta darshanam yenanjasa trishyamo dustaram bhavasagaram. It's a pretty sweet verse too. Tanna pradyotyadhyatma jnanam tatvarta darshanam. I like that phrase. Jnanam tatvarta darshanam yenanjasa trishyamo dustaram bhavasagaram. Please rekindle our true perception of selfhood, which would carry us to the far shore of the unsurpassable ocean of being. So they're asking Nārada to pradyotya, which means to rekindle, or to kindle, right? I don't know why I have to say rekindle. Please kindle. Awaken, even, you might say, right? I think I'm saying rekindle because they're claiming that they forgot it. Our infatuation with conventional affairs has almost obliterated what we learned from all attractive Shiva and Akshaja. Please rekindle our true perception of selfhood. So in that sense, tanna pradyota taya. Please rekindle the adhyatma jnana. Adhyatma jnana is a very nice phrase. Basically, it will be very superficially translated as spiritual knowledge. But adhyatma jnana means to perceive. Jnana means perception. Atma means self. Self-perception. Adhyatma means the true, the very paramount, the big self, the real self. Adhyatma jnana. So please rekindle our accurate self-perception. Tattva artha darshanam. The ability to see it truly and meaningfully. Tattva means truly and artha means meaningfully. Darshana, the ability to see ourselves truly and meaningfully. Give us this ability. Because yenanjasa tarisyamo dustram bhavasagara. That ability to see yourself clearly and meaningfully takes you across to the other shore of existence. This is also an interesting image or metaphor. There's a bhavasagara. A sagara is an ocean. Bhava means to exist. There's an ocean of existence. We're on one side. There's another side to the ocean of existence, but it's impossible to cross the ocean. Dustaram means you can't get across it. Tarishyama, you will get across it. Tarishram dustaram, you'll get across something which is impossible to cross. You'll get to the other side of the ocean of existence by yenanjasa, by that knowledge that enables you to see the self truly and meaningfully. So that's really good. So if you have any last questions, then we'll stop. I'll just reread the whole thing. So this is the last chapter in the fourth book of the Bhagavatam, fourth part of the Bhagavatam. It's going to be about the end of the Pracetas story. They say the Pracetas developed deep realization by living with Marisha while remembering what the most attractive had told them. When they had finally given their wife a son, they departed from their home. They went westward to the seashore, where Jajali taught them the meaning of the Vedas, and they were able to see all things the same way they saw themselves. They mastered the asana of standing straight up, which gave them complete control of their breath, feeling, words, and perceptions, and allowed them to concentrate themselves on Brahman without distraction or confusion. Nārada, who is adored by gods and demons alike, saw them doing this. When he came before them, they all welcomed him enthusiastically, bowing fully on the ground. I just can see it now, actually. They're standing up doing their asanas, and Nārada sees them. Then they notice Nārada seeing them, and they welcome him. They call him over to come over. When he came before them, they all welcomed him enthusiastically, bowing fully on the ground. After they had given him a respectable and comfortable seat, they began to inquire, "Welcome, sage of the gods. By good fortune today you have come within our sight. Just like the sun, you appear wherever you appear, confusion subsides. Our infatuation with conventional affairs has almost obliterated what we learned from all attractive Shiva and Akshaja. Please rekindle our true perception of selfhood, which would carry us to the far shore of the unsurpassable ocean of being." Good stuff. Any questions at the end? Johnny, how could you forget anything Shiva or Vishnu taught? Good point. Vida says, what pleases the Lord? He came to the many things please somebody. What pleased him about the Pracetas really was their ability to work without individual separatism. Good. If Vela feels that it's amazing, then it must really be amazing. All right, guys. Thank you very much.